Unfulfilled potential is something we're all used to as wrestling fans. Not only were we extradited from ordinary society as children, teens, or adults for our love of a form of entertainment most people laugh off as being fake, but we were likely attracted to the whole thing as a result of being just a little bit different to our more mainstream peers in the first place. Lads, lads, lads is the most unlikely of phrases you'll hear from a wrestling fan. And really, that dramatic nonsense is something you actually care about, is the most likely question a wrestling fan will be posed by his or her disappointed parents. Hi mum. Oh, how we could have all been so much more. Gamers have gone through a similar process. They've had to get through some tough times where they've been laughed off as nerds or antisocial freaks just to get to their more universally accepted position within mainstream culture today, a time in which only female gamers are treated with such a lack of respect. As such, gamers and wrestling fans are often one and the same, or can at least identify with one another's environmental struggles. But the fact is that there are no greater moments of unison between the two than when a wrestling video game mimicking pro wrestling or inspired by it is released, especially when it's good. Offer a hint of a wrestling-inspired video game, however, and suddenly the large crossover crowd of video game playing pro wrestling fans feel exactly how their parents felt as they grew up, burdened by the weight of an unfulfilled potential that one day turns into utter disappointment. Here are 10 such examples of promising unfinished pro wrestling video game projects that will leave a bitter taste in many a mouth. I'm Adam Pacitti from Cultaholic.com, and these are 10 wrestling video games you'll never get to play. Join us! Number 10, Wrestle Rage for the Super NES. When Nintendo partnered with would-be Banjo-Kazooie and Donkey Kong 64 developers Rare in 1991 to make a professional wrestling-inspired video game, similar to the side-scrolling beat-em-ups of the likes of Streets of Rage, there were many a Super NES fan chomping at the bit to play it. The idea, titled Wrestle Rage, was to have 8 fictitious wrestling characters including Mr. Mangler and the Silver Bullet be playable in the game, which would feature side-scrolling levels that were 3 scenes in length. Unfortunately, Wrestle Rage never saw the light of day, with Nintendo shelving the project due to marketing concerns regarding the title's lack of a recognizable license, leaving us all to wonder just how brutal Mr. Mangler may have been, and just how much in common Silver Bullet would have had with your mum's favorite bedtime toy. Number 9, WCW Mayhem 2, or WCW 2000. Damn that Vincent Kennedy McMahon. Damn him for having the whole of WCW in his hands. Damn his damnation of Jeff Jarrett and his mismanagement of purchasing the entirety of the WCW brand. Damn him. WCW Mayhem 2 was reportedly the next game down the pipeline from publishers EA and developers AKI when WWF bought out WCW in 2001. The PlayStation 2 sequel, also rumored to have been named WCW 2000, aimed to evolve the traditional wrestling game formula by incorporating branching storylines, a range of match types including First Blood and Gauntlet matches, and over 1,000 moves, a total unheard of at the time. While the game was never released due to WCW's sale to the WWF, themselves contracted with THQ at the time, rumor has it that EA repurposed the work completed on WCW Mayhem 2 for their hugely successful Def Jam Vendetta wrestling video game released in 2003, leaving many a WCW fan weeping at the lost potential of this unreleased gem. Number 8, TNA Impact 2. Back when TNA Impact was gaining steam as a viable second wrestling company in the US, Midway Games purchased the rights from under the noses of EA to publish a video game series using the company's long list of respectable IPs, including Sting, AJ Styles, Samoa Joe, Kurt Angle, Kevin Nash, and Booker T. Working through their development arm, Midway Studios Los Angeles, the company developed and released TNA Impact the video game for PS2, PS3, and Xbox 360 in 2008, and worked towards a sequel in the years that followed. However, despite the company incorporating promotable characters like Hulk Hogan into their product over that time, and Midway promoting the sequel as early as summer 2009, a sequel was never released, and fans were never given the opportunity to see developments made to the fast-paced pick-em-up-and-play wrestling franchise that offered a decent alternative to the slower WWE games of the time. This is because Midway was one of the many gaming companies that was disbanded and sold off during the recession. While a spin-off sequel did exist in the shape and form of TNA Impact Cross the Line for Nintendo DS and PSP via South Peak Games, a TNA Impact 2 was never fully released, making Impact the only major console release in TNA wrestling history. Number 7. Jesse the Body Ventura Wrestling Superstars. Jesse Ventura was a pretty big deal at the end of the 1980s, so DreamWorks thought they'd bring Fire Pro Wrestling developers Human in to make a video game based around his famous mustached face, and pro wrestling history titled Jesse the Body Ventura Wrestling Superstars. The title, which was announced at Winter CES in 1991 as a coming release for Sega Mega Drive, was never released despite being close to completion, and no explanation for its absence ever offered. Screenshots do remain of the project, as well as a basic prototype ROM which was leaked to a forum. It's said that much of the game engine was recycled for 1992 Japanese release Thunder Pro Wrestling Retsuden, a game that would never go on sale in the US or Europe. While Ventura wouldn't go on to make the type of name for himself within wrestling that so many other wrestling personalities from his era did, we can't help but feel like Jesse Ventura Wrestling Superstars may have helped to immortalize his image just that little bit more. Still, I love his conspiracy theories. Number 6. Chikara Action Arcade Wrestling. When pro wrestling company Chikara unveiled an Indiegogo campaign to fund a video game project based on their own license in 2016, the company quickly found $25,000 worth of backers willing to put their money into a project that would be headed by developers Vico Game Studio, the guys behind Xbox arcade wrestling game Action Arcade Wrestling. No, I've not played it either. Dubbed a quick, fast-paced arcade game, the Chikara release was set to go to PlayStation 4, Xbox One, and PC, and was even greenlit by Steam, but some 2 years later it still hasn't been released. It seems that the developers are still working on the project, posting semi-regular updates to Twitter and Facebook, but that a release date is still yet to be announced. While hope is high as regards to the possibility of one day getting a piece of this one, the likelihood seems to get smaller and smaller by the day, making it a video game you'll probably never get to play. Number 5. Super Mario Spikers. When Next Level Games, the same guys behind WWE Titans, more to come on that in a moment, were given the creative freedom by Nintendo to develop a sequel to the financially successful Mario Strikers series they had originated, they thought they'd make a volleyball game of all things. Why? We don't know. But the crew at NGL quickly discovered that volleyball was a contact-free sport, meaning their game would lack the same physicality as had made Mario Strikers such a well-received series. In order to keep the standards set by their original games, the creators began throwing around ideas to make wrestling moves a part of the offensive strategy of the players, incorporating pile drivers and DDT into the DNA of the game. Ultimately, the project would become a Mario character wrestling game named Super Mario Spikers. Taking some of the concepts the developers had pushed for at THQ with WWE Titans, Super Mario Spikers was set to be in various wrestling-inspired arenas or game show-like venues, each of which would have had its own gimmick, such as the Carnival Wheel, which would dictate different handicaps or enhancements per spin, but was ultimately turned down by Nintendo in 2007 for being too violent and against the direction of the company. Number 4. WWE Titans Parts Unknown. Remember THQ, the now defunct games publisher behind the WWE Smackdown vs. Brawl video game titles? Well, in 2004, as trends were changing towards more aesthetically pleasing video games, especially in the console market, they teamed with Super Mario Strikers and Punch-Out for Wii developers Next Level Games to develop a video game that planned to use exaggerated animation, their words not mine, to bring the PlayStation 2 and Xbox an original non-simulator based wrestling game titled WWE Titans Parts Unknown. Titans would place comic book style animated wrestlers in cinematic cityscapes that would be littered with arenas based on contemporary pro wrestler gimmicks such as Cena Stage, and work around a more movie-like storyline that is actually quite a lot like the foundation for the more recent WWE animated TV series WWE Slam City. As things turned out, WWE Titans was cancelled early on in its development, with little known about why the decision was made. As such, only concept art for the video game exists, though the idea seems to have stuck around in WWE's creative wheelhouse ever since. Number 3. WWE Brawl. Fast forward to 2011 and THQ were once again in pursuit of a wrestling-based video game that would further the WWE's in-ring action beyond the mat and into comic book-like cityscapes and exaggerated arenas, this time with WWE Brawl. Originally scheduled for release on the PlayStation 3 and Xbox 360, the game, developed by Blue Tongue Entertainment, was described by senior artist Drew Marrow in a WWE.com article as being like a comic book come to life, with the apparent inspiration for the game being Nintendo's hugely popular battle game, Super Smash Bros. But like its eerily similar predecessor WWE Titans, WWE Brawl would also be shelved, only this time after 3 whole years of development, owing its loss to THQ's post-banking crisis financial meltdown and the company's imminent closure. It looks like those itching to see in-game environments get completely smashed while battling juiced-up versions of their favorite WWE superstars can blame the recession on this one. Number 2, WWE Smackdown vs. Raw Online. In the same year, 2011, THQ were also developing a spin-off to their central wrestling game franchise WWE Smackdown vs. Raw, which would be creatively titled WWE Smackdown vs. Raw Online. In keeping with the game's title, the main aim of the Vertigo Games project was to take the SmackDown vs. Raw experience online. Duh. The game, which would be released on PlayStation 3 and Xbox 360, was to feature a free-to-play environment where players would take creator wrestlers and already existing characters from the bottom of the wrestling ladder to the top by developing skills in battle with other players in online matches, or by working through a pre-existing storyline that other gamers could check in through a spectator mode. THQ looked to make money from the free-to-play concept through the use of microtransactions, similar to those available in many games in the present day. One of the most attractive features of the game was the promise of new creation modes, including Create a Taunt, Create an Arena, Create a Finisher, Create an Entrance, and the use of a new JPEG tool that could be used to create unique designs in-game, a feature that would become a regular feature of the recent 2K releases. Inevitably, SmackDown vs. Raw Online was cancelled and therefore never saw the light of day. The reason? An 11.8% drop in earnings for THQ, the beginnings of financial troubles that would kill the publishers not long after. Number 1, WWF Backlash 64. Another would-be WWE title you can blame THQ for losing to the annals of time is WWF Backlash 64. The game, which was to be the sequel to arguably the greatest WWE video game of all time, Nintendo 64's WWF No Mercy, was reportedly 30% completed when it was cancelled for what is said to have been the result of Nintendo 64 coming to the end of its cycle as a console. AKI, the developers behind the likes of WWF WrestleMania 2000, WCW vs NWO World Tour, and WCW NWO Revenge, were placed in charge of developing the game, which has been dubbed the greatest wrestling game never made, despite there being barely any information about the game online. And that's our list. Let us know what you think in the comments below, and you can follow me on Twitter here. If you enjoy what we do here at Cultaholic, you can pledge to our Patreon. That's patreon.com/Cultaholic. And most importantly, don't forget to hit subscribe and join us.